Breaking news. Mark Consuelos was terrorized by a bunch of dudes who were farting at the gym. Not since Watergate has there been a scandal of this magnitude to rock the very foundation of our great nation. Thankfully, his handsome nostrils survived to share the ordeal. It's a tale as old as time and as pungent as Limburger cheese in a car without air conditioning. The Scream 7-star 54 recounted his olfactory nightmare on Thursdays, live with Kelly and Mark, according to EW. It was during a groundbreaking segment on high-tech underwear that can analyze farts when Consuelos said, "I was at the gym, this is when I was in Atlanta last January. It was a really nice gym, like a 2-story gym. People wore headphones. I don't. I like to be aware of what's going on." He added, "There were a couple guys that were just letting it fly. One guy letting it fly across from me, loud. He was sitting down, I was sitting down. I tried to make eye contact, like, come on, man." About 10 minutes later, another guy. I'm like, what's going on in this gym? But like loud. Let this be a lesson to us all. Maybe skipping the gym is the healthier option. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time Consuelos has suffered the wrath of tenacious toots. Ripper recalled another occasion when Mark faced a barrage of booty burps. By the way, that's the official medical term. My uncle, may he rest in peace, I don't think he'd mind me telling this story. He would take his hearing aids out, and he'd forget to put them back in. And he would let it rip, because he thought we couldn't hear it. He thought he was sneaking him out, right there at the Thanksgiving dinner table. You looked at me and you go, he doesn't hear that, does he? Look, it may not be pleasant, but flatulence is a natural body function. Fortunately, we have our best and brightest working on state-of-the-art solutions. Right, Kelly? Now they've got smart underwear. These are researchers developing smart underwear to track wearers' intestinal gas, Ripa said during the episode. She elaborated that volunteers are wanted to test out the device. They said to think of it like a continuous glucose monitor, but for farts. Consuelos joked that he would only be into this thing if it gave you a rank. Like, oh, that was good. Congratulations. Duration. Mark had just settled onto a bench when it began, a sudden, unmistakable sound. He froze, nostrils flaring. Across from him, a man had unleashed a thunderous fart. Loud, proud, and entirely unapologetic. Mark tried to make eye contact, silently begging for acknowledgement. Come on, man, his gaze seemed to plead. Nothing. The man simply continued his workout, oblivious to the olfactory trauma he had inflicted. Mark shifted uncomfortably, inhaling only as much as he could tolerate, counting down the seconds until the threat passed. But fate had other plans. Round 2. 10 minutes later, the unthinkable happened. Another man, seated nearby, joined the ranks of the gym's gastrointestinal warriors. Mark's eyes widened. His mind raced. What is going on in this gym? He could barely process the audacity, a coordinated, multi-man farting attack. It was as if some unspoken contest had begun, and Mark was the unwilling referee. Flashback, the family legacy. Kelly Ripa, observing the segment from the studio, couldn't resist adding context. Remember, Mark, she said, this isn't your first encounter with tenacious toots. Mark chuckled nervously, knowing full well what was coming. My uncle, Ripa continued, may he rest in peace, would take his hearing aids out and let it rip at Thanksgiving, thinking no one could hear. And you just look at me like, he doesn't hear that, does he? Mark laughed, shaking his head. It was a family legacy of audacious flatulence, and apparently, it had skipped a generation. Or, in this case, extended into the Atlanta gym scene. Smart underwear to the rescue. Fortunately, modern science had an answer. Kelly turned to the camera with a gleam in her eye. Now they've got smart underwear, she said. Researchers are developing it to track wearers' intestinal gas. Mark raised an eyebrow. And I would only be into it if it gave a rank. Like, oh, that was good. Congratulations. Duration. The studio erupted in laughter. It was absurd, it was ridiculous, and it was exactly the kind of segment viewers couldn't wait to share with their friends. The Gym Chronicles. Mark recounted every detail. The first man, the second man, how they had coordinated their attacks with perfect, unspoken timing. He spoke of the sweat dripping from the weight racks, the treadmill hum in the background, and how every inhale threatened to cross into forbidden territory. The tension was almost cinematic. You could picture it in slow motion. Mark bracing himself, the unsuspecting offender raising a dumbbell, and the dreaded noise reverberating across the gym floor. It was survival. Every bench press, every squat, every cardio session was now a battle against not just gravity, but olfactory aggression. The science behind the chaos. Back in the studio, Kelly explained the technological marvel of the day. Volunteers are wanted to test this smart underwear, she said. Think of it like a continuous glucose monitor, but for farts. Mark tilted his head. So basically it's a leaderboard for your butt? Kelly grinned. Exactly. The crowd laughed. It was one of those moments where absurdity met reality, a concept so ridiculous it made perfect sense in the chaotic, over-the-top world of Live with Kelly and Mark. Mark's reflection. As Mark recounted his Atlanta ordeal, he reflected on life's unpredictability. Fame, fortune, and good looks couldn't protect you from the basic realities of biology. You could star in a hit TV series, co-host a beloved morning show, and still be vulnerable to rogue gastrointestinal attacks at your local gym. It was humbling. And yet, there was something unifying about it. Every human, no matter how glamorous, was subject to the same bodily functions. The rich, the famous, and even the handsome Mark Consuelos were all equal in the face of flatulence. Lessons learned. Mark's story wasn't just a cautionary tale. It was a philosophical exploration. Always be aware of your surroundings. Never underestimate the power of human biology. Sometimes, laughter is the only proper response. And of course, consider skipping the gym entirely. Or at least, choosing a location with better ventilation. The studio wrap-up. The segment ended with Mark and Kelly sharing a knowing smile. Well, it could have been worse, Kelly said. You could have been trapped in there for hours. Mark nodded gravely. Survived to tell the tale, he replied. And for viewers, that was more than enough. The story would be shared, retold, and laughed over for weeks. It was the kind of viral moment television was made for, a mix of celebrity, absurdity, and universal human experience. Epilogue, the legend of the gym farts. Mark's Atlanta incident became legend. Friends texted, fans tweeted, and the segment was replayed countless times online. In households across America, people laughed at the saga of the handsome TV star who braved rogue gym farts. In the end, it wasn't just about Mark, the smart underwear, or even the audacity of the offenders. It was about resilience, humor, and the shared absurdity of life. Because in the grand tapestry of existence, some battles are fought with dumbbells, some with cunning, and some with a nose against the tide. And Mark Consuelos had survived all of them.